as Billy Piper might say. Yeah, I'm back. Why? Doctor Who's over, isn't it? It's dead. Completely, totally dead. But I thought, well, why not? I've had a chance to reflect a little bit. I thought I'll come back and do an afterthought video. Yeah, why not? I've had a bit of time to think now. I mean, in my video about the reality war, obviously I recorded it immediately after I'd seen the episode, so emotions were raw. I said a few things that, I meant but wouldn't normally say aloud, like comparing Russell to Hitler. Sorry about that, Rouselle. I shouldn't really have said it, but hiring Billy Piper and sticking her on the end of that show, for me, was like destroying Paris in 1944. Someone should have stopped you. Somebody should have said, no, Rouselle, we won't do it. We won't paste Billy Piper's face onto Shooty's body. But you're the boss, aren't you? No one can stop you. You're there in your bunker with all your little yes men and yes women. Yes, Rouselle, sure, we'll do that. Well, we don't know why we're doing it, but we'll do it. Since the episode came out, in the last few days, there's been a lot of online speculation, mostly on Reddit, from an insider called Andrew. We're calling this speculation. He's our whistleblower. He's our alleged inside man, meaning he's probably a woman. If I were you, Rouselle, I'd sack all the female staff at Bad Wolf. It's the only way to be sure. Of course, I don't mean that, but it's a joke. But anyway, what did Andrew say? He said that you could explain the seemingly nonsensical decision to bring in Billy Piper by the fact that it was considered way after the fact, and even Rouselle doesn't know why the fuck she's there, which to me made complete sense, because he hadn't planned for Ncuti Gatwa's departure. He had no idea the guy was going, so had written no contingency. All of his scripts for the next series, which have yet to be commissioned and will probably never be commissioned, assumed that Ncuti Gatwa would still be the Doctor. So Rouselle doesn't have a grand plan. All of you online going, well, maybe Rose is Bad Wolf. Maybe Bad Wolf is back. Blah, blah. You've done more thought on the subject than Rouselle. He doesn't know. He's like you. He's now scrambling around, nervously trying to retrospectively make it all work. My God, Billy said yes. I didn't think she'd say yes. I read this on two levels, ladies and gentlemen.
In a sense, Duncan, we are left with those two. Two. None other, nary another, not one other more. We have on the one side of the gulf, the chasm, the dividing line, if you please, we have the beauty of ideas. And on the other, I don't know the other term of the equation, if that's nicer, we have the idea.
My first thought is this, that Rouselle, fairly certain that the show was going to be axed, knowing that this could be the last hurrah for him, wanted to end this run of the show with a monument to himself. The creations he's most proud of are David Tennant and Billy Piper, because they're the Doctor and companion that he sees it have become iconic. Now, I don't really like Rose Tyler. As you know, I had no interest in the programme during RTD1. I watched it, and I enjoyed some episodes, usually Stephen's episodes, but I wasn't moved to write about it or do a video about it, because there wasn't enough there for me. It was just sort of broad and too preoccupied with people like Noel Clarke, who turned out to be a sex offender. And John Barrowman, who, you know, well, we won't get into that. Anyway, the point was, I was not a fan of RTD1. I liked David Tennant very much, but the writing not so much. When Stephen took over, then I got excited. I thought, here's a man who, on the strength of his contribution to the RTD1 era, or the RTD era as we then called it, not knowing there'd ever be a 2. It's a bit like the way we now call World War One, World War One. On the strength of his contribution to that era, I thought Moffat was the best thing that had happened to Doctor Who in the new era. I was delighted he was taking over, and I enjoyed his contribution at first and was challenged by it at first. And it was only when really he made a monumental cock-up because he used that accursed plot device, the ontological paradox, the bootstrap paradox in the Pandorica Opens. That's when, out of fury, I was moved to write an open letter to him on the internet, and the rest is history. But it's only because I cared, you see, that I was moved to write about it. Nothing Russell wrote ever made me feel that way. I was just, oh God. You know, he's cut the show's IQ in half, and hated Rose, hated Rose's mother, hated Mickey, the fucking boyfriend, all of it. No, it's not what I would have done. What Stephen did is closer to what I would have done, but with a bit more, you know, dramatic seriousness on occasion. But look, listen, we're digressing here. And so much so, I'm not even sure I can remember what I was going to say. But the point perhaps is this. Rouselle looks back at that era and he thinks, I'm the one who brought back Doctor Who. Now, and my characters are the one that cut through, and it was a success because of me, etc., etc. Now, that has retrospectively become an accepted myth, isn't it? We all think that, don't we? Well, not all of us. I don't, you see. My theory is this. The Doctor Who is such an iconic brand and was so missed as a television series by 2005. Because even the people who axed it didn't think it would be off air for 16 years. Look it up. They thought, it'd be back in 1994 or whatever. So they destroyed it, but expecting it to be revived by somebody else, someone who was passionate about it. And I should apologise really to fans of John Nathan Turner, JNT. I've been harsh on him because, of course, without him, it has to be noted, it's only fair to say that Doctor Who wouldn't have run throughout the 1980s without JNT. Because there was no one waiting in the wings to replace him. People say, well, what about Andrew Cartmel? Andrew Cartmel would not have produced it. He was a script editor. He didn't have the heft to take it over entirely. So JNT kept it alive throughout the 1980s, and we must be forever grateful to him for that. But here's the point. Doctor Who would have come back at some stage, and I think it would have been a hit regardless, as long as it had been made in Britain by the BBC and had retained a British context. That's why the 1996 TV movie didn't quite work. And it wasn't for us anyway, it was for American television, and judged on what they considered to be successful criteria. As long as it had been revived by the BBC with serious people behind it, I think it would have been a hit. I don't think we can say that Russell's particular treatment of Doctor Who was the only winning formula. I don't think that that's fair. I know he believes it, because circumstantially he's the guy who was chosen to bring it back. But it could have been brought back in a number of ways, and it wouldn't necessarily have been his treatment that won out. It could have been a much more adult, more serious treatment. And if it had been, by the way, a lot of the problems that we've experienced along the rocky road of New Who may not have occurred. In other words, just as World War I led to World War II, RTD1 led to RTD2. You can't have the second without the first. And all the problems that we've experienced in RTD2 are a direct consequence of the things that Rouselle conceived in RTD1, including the tone. It was all there. If you go back, you look back on the first video I made on this subject about welcoming back Rouselle, question mark, it was all in there. Before I'd even seen one of his specials, I was worried, because I thought, based on RTD1, that there was a lot in there to fear. The camp, the flippancy, the habit of casting, light entertainment personalities like JNT. Everything that was in the RTD1 was in RTD2, but only more so. Matt Smith never sung the tune to Ghostbusters in the TARDIS control room, did he? We would have caught Peter Capaldi doing that. The signs were there, and just as World War I and World War II were very different in character, the events of one led directly into the events of two, and so some people push them together as one long war. Well, when the books are finally written about Rouselle, it will be one long era that is discussed, I believe. But Rouselle believes that RTD1 era is his best work. And so when it came to sort of putting something on the end of this, when he realised in that awful period, probably between, I don't know, last autumn and February, that the show was likely not to come back, when he got wind of it in his own, at the Bad Wolf offices and in his own mind, he must have thought, well, if I'm going to lose Shooty, and if the show's not guaranteed to come back, there's no harm me sticking my signature on the end of this episode. If I could, I'd put my own face onto Shooty's. I'd have me go, oh, hello, at the end of the episode. But that would be weird. The audience wouldn't understand that. So who's me in human form? Who's me in the world of Doctor Who? Paging Billie Piper. Get her in. I mean, the infuriating thing about this Reddit leak is that Billie Piper allegedly did this as a favour to Rouselle without actually having any idea how her character would be used. Rouselle didn't know. Rouselle didn't know even which character she was playing. All he wanted was something that sort of was emblematic, symbolic of his original period in charge. I started with David Tennant. I'll end with Billie Piper. I would have started with Christopher Eccleston, but he hates my fucking guts!
Sack Russell T Davies, sack Jane Tranter, sack Phil Collinson, sack Julie Gardner, and I'll come back. So can you arrange that?
And one might think there's some wisdom there. So, look, I'd love to know what went on set during that first period of the programme. Wouldn't you? Dying to know. I hope one day Eccleston opens up properly about that, because it's all been very vague, but it's almost as if Rousselle's a difficult man to work for. I can't believe that, but maybe, who knows. If that's all it was, just a sort of a thing to kind of round off his period on the programme, it was an incredibly, as I said in my original review, an incredibly self-indulgent, selfish thing to do. Because if Doctor Who comes back, and we don't know if it will, we don't know if it won't, it binds the hands of the next showrunner. They've either got to ignore it, or they've got to do something with Billy Piper. And who in God's name would want to be lumbered with Billy Piper from the start? Because Billy Piper's contribution to the programme is very specific, isn't it? Either you've got a choice to make, don't you? Either you make her the Doctor and say this is the Doctor adopting one of his favourite faces from the past, and acting like, I don't know, the last Doctor he saw, Jodie Whittaker. So you've got this horrific fusion of Rose Tyler and a holiday rep from Magaluf. Boy, I'm really looking forward to that winning spin on the formula. I'm sure that's going to bring millions back. Or you do a story about the revival of the Bad Wolf thing, and you make it a temporary kind of gimmick, which hopefully you wrap up in about 15-20 minutes before bringing on the Doctor's real next incarnation. And also, this is a horrible way to try and, if you like, strong-arm Disney into commissioning another season. I suppose Rousselle's thinking, look, it's a stunt, right? A ridiculous stunt. It'll get people talking, as it's got us talking. But we're not really talking. I'm talking at you. You're listening. That's the way I prefer it, both on YouTube and in real life. But we're talking about it, aren't we? And people are talking about it. They're interested. They want to know what the fuck's going on. Now, in that respect, it's succeeded, hasn't it? But then, it doesn't make it any less ridiculous. If Michael Barrymore's face had appeared instead of Shooty Gatwood, we'd all be talking about it, but for the wrong reasons. What's a hot spot? Not indeed. Anyway, you understand what I'm saying, don't you? The whole thing, it's not just desperation. It smacks of, just sort of, fumbling around for any old shit. Just something that you can throw at the screen that will get people going. But Disney executives don't share our strange affection for Billy Piper. I don't have any, but you may have some. Billy Piper, is she, she's a big star in England? What has she done? Oh, she was a pop star, and, what else? Well, like a sort of a failed Britney Spears. But she got famous by doing Doctor Who. Okay, right. Okay, that's cool. What else did she do? She played a hooker. Okay, well, it's not really the kind of brand association we were hoping for, but so what evidence have you got that she can play a sort of a wise old, 2,000-year-old plus alien that sort of represents the pinnacle of civilization. What's your thinking about that, Russell? Answer came there none, I suspect. Look, if I were Disney, I would get the fuck out of there. I would cut and run. They've thrown their money at Rouselle, and what's he given them? 16 episodes of dross, admittedly, one or two reasonable installments, a certain energy, sure, and a certain unpredictability, certainly. So this isn't the Chris Chibnall era. It wasn't bland, was it? The last two seasons of Doctor Who. But nor were the last two seasons rich or exciting or involving from a storytelling point of view. They had a certain exuberance, a certain dynamism, and Ncuti Gatwa was a very convivial and nice doctor who cried a lot. But it was an edgeless performance, wasn't it? This doctor, you felt, did not have layers and layers and layers to explore over many, many years. That said, now it's sunk in that he's gone, people are thinking, oh, fuck, we miss him. Because he was nice. Well, of course he was nice. But I still say it was like, your gay best friend from your favourite North London club finding the keys to the TARDIS. Maybe one of those keys that Clara threw away. Poor Peter Capaldi, the real Doctor, is still on that fucking volcano somewhere. Still on Mustafa. Thinking, how the fuck am I going to get out of this one? I hope that the people who stole my TARDIS haven't got up to no good. Well, Peter, I'm sorry to tell you, they have. You wouldn't believe what's been done in your name out there, Doctor. You wouldn't believe it. So, certainly nothing you'd recognise as your authentic self. So, Ncudi's gone, and Ncudi would have benefited from more seasons of the show. But if they were more like this, I'm not sure we've been cheated, really. If it was always going to be like this, better to stop it now than to go for 4 years of sort of camp fantasy. I think I can live the rest of my life without seeing season 3 and 4 of this Doctor's adventures, if they were going to be like this. Edgeless and aimless. And horribly, cloyingly sentimental. The other thing to say about that final episode, of course, is, the threads that were not pulled. Principally the thing about Susan. Why, in God's name, you ask, not unreasonably, did Rouselle not cut those appearances from Susan out once he had an inkling that the show might not continue under his stewardship? Why not just remove those scenes? Did he feel that it was too insulting, Carol Ann Ford, to cut them out because of who she is, because of her status? Did he think, well, we've brought her in and we've shot those scenes, we can't in good conscience cut them? But leaving him in there without a payoff makes no sense. The payoff presumably was coming in the third season, quote unquote. But it's ridiculous, isn't it, from a storytelling point of view, to tease Susan's presence and then not pay it off. It's outrageous to do that. And this is what makes you angry. The same with the sort of what people are calling the Poppy retcon. You know, the fact that Belinda was originally shown fucking around in a house of multiple occupation as a depressed, you know, lonely singleton who shared a fridge after work, but all the time she had a child that she'd forgotten. Okay. I still don't really understand the significance of this Poppy subplot. I don't why the child was so significant or whatever, and how the child came into being in the first place when the child was originally seen on a fucking space station in the future, one before Belinda had come into the program. I don't get it. And I hope I'm not being stupid, and I can't be bothered to go back and rewatch the episodes, but it doesn't link up to me in my mind. I can understand, there was the scene, as I recall, where, you know, the doctor said, I wish I was your dad, but I'm not. Something along those lines. Or him and Ruby, we wish we were your parents, but we're not. Well, in that case, it would make sense that Poppy would appear in the Wish world as Ruby's daughter. But why Belinda's? Do you know what I mean? Shouldn't Ruby and the Doctor have been married in Wish world and had Poppy as their child? But maybe Rouselle thought, oh, that doesn't work because, I don't know, Poppy is obviously in no way, you know, mixed race, is she? Mind you, I'm sure Shooty's genes are very powerful. But let's not get into that. So the Poppy thing doesn't make sense. It looks like a kind of hasty redraft, doesn't it? It looks like something that Rouselle had to do at the last moment to accommodate, you know, Shooty's departure and the Shooty's availability to film reshoots, etc., etc. And all of that other backstage guff and nonsense that we as fans should not really have to think about, because we don't come on this journey to think about reshoots and actors' contracts and budgets and co-production agreements, do we? We come on this journey because we want to enjoy the show. So when you can see the join and when you can get a sense that behind the scenes things have gone badly wrong, it's depressing. It fucks everything up. It ruins our experience. That's another reason to be angry with Rouselle. Look, it's not his fault, is it, that Shooty has shooted? Shooty had to shoot. It's not his fault. Shooty obviously believes his own press. He obviously has bought into the idea of his own stardom. He thinks he's got a Hollywood career to look forward to out there. Maybe he does. I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. But really, my view is if you sign on for Doctor Who, your loyalty should remain to the programme until, shall we say, it's the right time for the show for you to depart. Not necessarily the right time for you to go. Still, that's just my personal opinion. Anyway, where does that leave it? Where does that leave us? Well, it leaves us fucking nowhere. It leaves us with a terrible 5-part spin-off, the war against the land and the sea and the land, to not look forward to. All eyes will be on that and how popular that pointless unit spin-off is, because if that does well, maybe that will convince Disney to give Rouselle one more go. If Disney don't give Rouselle one more go, what do the BBC then do? Well, if I'm the BBC, and I'm a fan of the BBC, please don't write to me and say, oh, the BBC should be abolished because it makes one programme I don't like. Fuck you! BBC is a cultural institution in Britain which is absolutely vital, and it makes a lot of material for lots of very niche audiences like Doctor Who that would not exist otherwise and could not exist in the commercial marketplace, and it is culturally essential. So please don't write to me about getting rid of the BBC. I'm not one of those people. I'm a fan of the BBC. Not to say the BBC hasn't made mistakes. Of course it has, but that's not its fault. It's because it's frequently under attack from the right-wing press and from government. It needs to be made completely independent of government so that it can get back to doing what it does best, making shows for us, programmes as we used to call them in Britain before American cultural imperialism corrupted our vocabulary. Programmes for all. Anyway, enough of that. What if you're the BBC? What do you do? Well, you take back control, to coin a phrase. You resume production of the show yourself in-house. You don't farm it out ever again to somebody like Rouselle. The showrunners work for you, not for themselves. And if that means that you've got to pay for the fucking thing yourself, you pay for it yourself. Just as you did for the first 40 years. You know, or 50 years, or however many fucking years, you know. For the first 40 seasons, you pay. And if that means it's cheaper, that's fine with me. I don't give a fuck. I don't need to see movie level visual effects. What I need to see are good stories which capture the imagination, which stimulate talking points, so that I can create meaningless content on the internet. I've got something to say in an otherwise empty life. Please give me something to talk about. Please. I'm begging you. So, look. The BBC are stuck with, oh, hello, Billy Piper. What do? This is what I would do. I would bring Russell into a meeting and I'd say, Rouselle, you're a cunt. You should not have done this. God knows why whoever else gave you permission to do it in the first place. Maybe you didn't need permission. Maybe that's the problem. But you certainly need it now. I hate what you've done. Now, I'm going to give you 3 options. 1, it was the doctor's regenerative fever dream, and that Billy's face disappears and morphs into the real person we're going to cast in the role. 2, we ignore it. Or 3, I'll give you one 90-minute special, to turn that cameo into a coherent, feature-length Doctor Who story, at the end of which we meet the new Doctor, or during which we meet the new Doctor. But it will be a Doctor that we have chosen, not you. And you will be working with your new partner, Inland, who will be taking over from you following the conclusion of this 90-minuter. This is your opportunity to put the full stop on your time in the TARDIS, go out on a high, regain your reputation for dramatic integrity. Give us one for the ages, Rouselle. Give us something that we'll be talking about in 10 years' time. My PA has helpfully drawn up a list of things we don't want to see in the special. Remember, camp destroys drama, Rouselle. Make it grounded, make it gritty, make it exciting. Make us miss you, not celebrate your passing. And work with to make it a nice coherent lead-in to the new BBC era of the show. And if that's about, if it's about Susan, if it's about bringing Susan back and tying everything to the beginning of the show, thereby encouraging people to go back and re-watch the first 40 seasons or 41 seasons, however many seasons we're on, while looking to the future and being excited about the future as a sort of jumping on point. Brilliant. Do that. Do that. And we'll say no more about Billie Piper's cameo, okay? Make it work. Because if you don't, we will rerun the reality war with Billie cut out. We'll just do whatever the fuck we like. If you want to have some say on how these things tie off, you want to pull your threads and tie them together in a neat little bow for us, this is your one opportunity to do so. That's what I'd do. Yes? That's the only way out, isn't it? Margaret Thatcher, former British Prime Minister, once said, memorably, always have a way out. Now, Rouselle will not be a fan of Mrs. Thatcher, but he should have those words on his fucking whiteboard every morning. Maybe it's the only way to save Doctor Who. The only way to move it on. But yes, absolutely, it needs new blood. It needs a new face. And the face in the opening titles, by the way, as they used to be. Not, I think, an American or anyone like that. Not J. Michael Straczynski or whatever, Babylon 5. As interesting as that would be. But let's bring some people in who can really make it exciting and interesting. I was watching Department Q recently on Netflix. Co-written by Scott Frank. Get him in. Let's have Matthew Good as a curmudgeonly doctor who tells everyone to fuck off. I love it. Let's have that. I'd watch that every week. Let's make it new. But remember what it's about. As I said in my previous video, think about the key factors. Culture, sexuality, format. They're fundamental to the future of the programme. What works and what doesn't work. I never again in my life want to see a unit employee with a hyper-powered wheelchair that for no reason makes her go so quickly that it would leave a pair of fire trails behind her. It'd probably snap her neck, wouldn't it? The inertia. But if Rouselle thinks, again, you know, because he's in love with his own characters, if he thinks that what the audience want to see are more of Hot Wheels, Jimmy, Chips the Robot, and Kate, Lethbridge Stewart, he's fucking crazy. No. They're the weakest links. Goodbye! See, the weakest link. That's a reference you understand, isn't it, Rouselle? That's it. Those are my thoughts on the late Doctor Who. I show that I don't think it's coming back anytime soon, but you know, if it does, I suppose I'll come back to. I don't know. Let's see what they're going to do with it. Let's see if I'm inspired. Once Stephen Moffat inspired me to brush all the crisp packets and chocolate fragments and you know, bits of peanut from M&M's off my face and get up and write about his version of the Doctor. So enthused was I and interested was I in what he had done. I want to feel that way again. I suspect you do too, don't you? So let's hope it happens. Otherwise, a show with the greatest potential in all of television will have been sacrificed at the altar of stupidity. We don't want that, do we? So until next time, I'm Dr. McElvoy. It's not my real name. Sleep well, but don't worry. I'll be back. We'll be back!